Hello viewers, you join me at the Faithless Forum with my good friend Dave Warnock.
Hey.
Welcome, Dave.
Hey, Lloyd.
You have been on the channel before.
It's been a while.
I interviewed you over Zoom, and I finally get to meet you in person, which is a really special thing.
Thank you.
It's
been an honor too for me.
I think that's one of the special things about doing events like this is
It is.
It's one thing to, have contact online, but sometimes you need to be able to eyeball someone.
Yeah,
don't you?
it makes all the difference. Like I said this morning, I just love meeting people in person that I've connected with online. We thought we'd meet. We were going to go to Europe last year. We thought we'd meet you in Croatia, but here we are in Austin, Texas.
Well, the invitation's still open.
Well, we're still coming.
We'll work on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it's been a really interesting conference. It's brought a lot of people together. Did it go how you expected it?
I've just been really pleased with it. I think the format was great. Thomas did a great job of putting together a good group of people. It was interesting. Plenty of time for entertainment and fun and levity, but lots of good information. Good format with panels and workshops and speakers. Yeah, I think it's great. A little early this morning for me after a late night of partying. 8 o'clock comes early.
Yeah, and it's a little bit triggering for me because Jehovah's Witnesses have their conventions Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So hang on a minute.
Hang on. Yeah, start a little later sometimes.
But you gave a really rousing speech, and hopefully viewers will be able to see that in some form on YouTube. A link will be in the description. Viewers of this channel will hopefully already be familiar with, the Dying Out Loud campaign. And do you feel as though having these opportunities to speak at events like this is giving you a level of catharsis and allowing you to spread your message?
Yeah, it's speaking to a group of people is a special treat for me. I like the connection. I mean, I do a lot of online stuff, as you do, but that has a certain disconnect. And like you said, just the live connection with people in a room, I really do feed off of the energy of a crowd. And so it's a special treat for me, and to get to talk about the things that are important for me to talk about, which can be a heavy subject, death and dying and what we're doing with the life we have. But to get the feedback from people and see that it means something to them, that it helps them process life and death a little more in ways that maybe they hadn't thought of before. I really am thankful for that opportunity. I don't know, it's a weird dichotomy in that if I hadn't got diagnosed with ALS, I wouldn't be doing these things. I wouldn't be speaking at conventions and public gatherings and doing YouTube shows. I just would be another deconverted Christian,
Well, you explain that brilliantly in your talk about how, you did go through a period of being an atheist but not being an activist.
Right.
And, the diagnosis has put everything in quite sharp relief, presumably.
It has, yeah. And it kind of really made me want to use the time I had left judiciously, and it kind of ramped up my efforts to talk about things that are important and to try to make a difference and try to make an impact. And so in whatever ways I've been able to do that, I'm extremely grateful, although it's a weird thing because I wouldn't have this platform if I didn't have this disease. I don't know how to explain that other than it's got to be God. I don't know any other explanation for it, right, Lloyd?
You were cracking jokes like this on the stage, and I couldn't help but wonder, was Dave cracking jokes like this as a pastor?
I did. I had a lot of humor in my sermons. I had a lot of emotion. People tell me it's not something I consciously try to do, but I would be crying and people would be crying, or I would be laughing and people would be laughing, and I guess I've learned that engaging people's emotions one way or the other causes them in some ways to let their guard down and be more receptive to what's being said, and especially with such a heavy message, death and dying. I've learned that if I don't inject some humor into it, it can be a little heavy. It can be a little much for a 15 or 20 or 30-minute talk. So I think the humor causes people to relax a little bit and open themselves up to thinking and talking about something that's a little uncomfortable.
I've recorded a video today with my fellow ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and we were talking about apostasy, which is kind of another issue almost to atheism, because you can of course be a Jehovah's Witness apostate who's still a theist.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
this whole issue of coming out of religion and the struggle to extricate yourself from a controlling group is like a different conversation. Do you think that atheism means something a bit different for those who have come from fundamentalist background?
Yeah, I think every branch of religion, or every tribe, if you will, treats things like that differently. I know in my evangelical world, the term backsliding, that was a thing. And so you could be an apostate who was a backslidden Christian, but still be a Christian, still identify as a Christian who's just out of favor with God, so to speak. And people in that tribe would look at you as an apostate, but they wouldn't consider you an atheist unless you identified that way outright. And so that's kind of a step outside the box, whereas an apostate in that world I was in, I'm not sure how it is in the JW, but in that evangelical world, you could be a backslidden Christian, an apostate, and still be considered a Christian. They wouldn't look at me as an atheist. So my Christian friends and family don't quite know what to do with my atheism because it's outside the box. And they don't really have a category in which to put that. That's kind of what I've seen.
You're a different type of heretic.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that the heretic's another word like apostate. It's kind of that rebellious child kind of thing. Whereas an atheist says, no, I'm not your child. I'm not a child of God. I don't believe that he's there. So I can't be a rebellious child if I don't believe the Father's there. It's a different category in my mind.
Since our last conversation, has there been any contact with your family?
Absolutely, there has.
Right.
Interestingly enough, I've got 2 daughters and a son. My son has always been fine with me. The 2 daughters had a period of cutting me off after initially because I got out of favor with the particular church I was on staff with. They shunned both me and my wife at the time. And then I got divorced. And in the process before the divorce, I let them know that I no longer believed in God and I was an atheist. And so they distanced themselves from me at that point, both of them. And over the years, that has remained the same until like this past year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and my older daughter, I reached out to both of them prior to Christmas, about a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. I've got 6 grandkids between the 2 of them, three each. And I just said, can I get the grandkids some Christmas presents? I hadn't done that in a while, and I hadn't made any attempts in a while. After a while, when you try and keep getting your hand bit, and you just kind of quit reaching out. And so I had pulled back from that and just said, I don't know what to do, so I can't do anything. But I reached out and said, can I get the grandkids something? And my older daughter responded positively and said, yeah, that'd be fine. And so I did an Amazon gift list thing and sent that to them. And then she agreed. Last spring, we started dialoguing back and forth about seeing each other, seeing the grandkids, and she was open to it, surprisingly. And then we dialogued back and forth about when and where, and finally made it work back in May, I think. We met up with them, her family, her husband, and 3 kids at a coffee shop in North Carolina. They were going through, we were going through, so it worked out. Had a nice 2-hour visit, got the grandkids some presents. One of the granddaughters I had never met. She was 5 years old. The other 2 were twins, and they were 8, and I hadn't seen them since they were about 3. It was a lovely visit, and we're actually planning to go see them in a couple of weeks. They live down in Florida again, and I don't have any idea what's opened that door. Nothing has changed from my perspective. I'm the same person I was 5, 6, in fact, way more outspoken.
Yeah.
But when they cut me off, so to speak, I wasn't even an atheist activist. I wasn't doing anything.
Yeah.
But in the last 2 to 3 years, I'm out there and I'm very public with what I do and what I say. And I don't know. I don't know what's changed in their world. I just I'm thankful for it, but I don't have any expectation around it.
Well, there will be lots of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses watching who are being shunned by relatives.
I know that. Yeah, it's a very common practice in that world.
And they will draw strength from what you've just said. Sometimes shunning just does collapse.
I don't know. Yeah, and I guess I'm glad to hear you say that, because it almost makes me weep.
Yeah.
Because I know how hard that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if it gives them hope that things can change, that's a wonderful thing, because it can.
Yeah.
And I would just say, and this is just for me, be who you are and don't apologize for it. I've always had that stance, and in all my interviews, and I think I even probably did this with yours, because I've tried very hard in my interviews talking about my daughters. I've always been kind about them. I've not lashed out and been angry. I said, I understand why they did that.
Yeah.
I've always understood that they were being true to their faith. They were following their convictions, and I admire that. Even when it affects me, because you want people in this world to be true to themselves, including my daughters, in terms of how they treat me. And so, to your listeners and viewers, be who you are, be true to yourself, and because you don't know what's going on the other side. And I don't know what's shifted in her. Sometimes life just takes a toll on you.
Yeah.
Life just happens, and it changes the way you see things.
Yeah, and this kind of circles back to what we were saying earlier about the distinction between atheism and apostasy, because when you're having these reconciliations with your daughter, the kindness and empathy that you display, which facilitates this, is informed by your religious experience and you remembering what it's like to be there.
Exactly, the empathy that I have with them in that world, because I lived in that world for so long. I raised them in that, and they are only being true to what I raised them to be. You can't fault that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't find fault with that. What I've seen is that even when we started dialoguing about meeting together, we were doing Marco Polo videos. And I showed Bevan when we would get one, and when my daughter started including the grandchildren in the videos, I thought, she's going to open the door here. She wouldn't have them in there seeing their grandfather on a video if they weren't going to let them meet me. And so I thought, wow, this is interesting. But we started talking, and she would say things like, now, I want to get to know, what's going on in your world, and I want to tell you what's going on in mine. She said, are you okay with me talking about our life, their church? They do a church. He's a pastor. Her husband's a pastor of a startup church in Florida. And I said, of course. And she said, and I want to know what's going on in your world. And so, like when we got together, I'd ask her, how's the church been since you guys, because they had to do remote church for a while because of COVID, even in Florida. She said, it's been hard. We lost people. People would get upset with us. There would be some that would be upset because we were requiring masks, and some would be upset because we weren't. We can't win, is what they said. And then I would say things like, in sharing about my life, I didn't say, well, in my atheist world, I didn't rub it in. But I would say things like in our travels, it's interesting because we meet these people and they want us to stay with them, and we've got all these places that when we go travel, we've got places to stay and people that want to meet us. And I said, that's really, because at that time I think we were still planning to do the Europe trip before we canceled that. But so I was letting her have a glimpse into my world without slapping her in the face with it. And she was doing the same with her world, and we were very accommodating for each other, and it was really, really refreshing. It was really quite a beautiful time together.
Of course, in some situations the shunning doesn't collapse. Like I'm thinking, in terms of my own father, I'm just beyond any expectation of him waking up. I think everyone's different, aren't they? We're all different individuals, and we all have different feelings about other people.
And I think Jehovah's Witness, if I understand it, is probably a little more firm on the shunning. It's a decided
It's a
practice.
command, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a different thing. Our evangelical world, it's a very rare situation that practice. And in fact, my other daughter, for whatever reasons, has not come around, doesn't even respond to me. I sent the same email to both of them and didn't get a response from one. I raised them both the same. You know, I'm the same person, but they just see things differently and they react differently, and there's no way to, I can't control that. All I can do is deal with what I have control over. And with my older daughter, even after I had that meeting with them, I left there with no expectations, with no sense of, oh my God, this is the first, now it's on, now we're gonna see them all. I didn't allow myself to do that. I was completely detached from any expectation. If that was the only time I ever saw them, I was gonna be thankful for that. If she opened the door for more, I would walk through it. But I didn't have any sense of demands. I think I've just learned to not try to connect the moments, just to appreciate the moment for what it is. And if another one comes along that's similar, take it.
Yeah.
But don't put yourself in a position of expectations that only is going to lead to disappointment.
A really powerful moment in your talk, if I can just change the subject slightly, was the part where you expressed about how one of the worst things you can say to someone who is has a terminal diagnosis is to say, well, we all die, you know, and that was a really powerful thing for me, and it kind of drives home the fact that, like you say, the clock is ticking. When the clock is ticking, does it make you look at kind of world events and world politics and the future of the world slightly differently, or are you just purely thinking about your own experience?
No, I am concerned about the future of the world and the way things are going, especially in America, and politics and the way things. I mean, COVID, for example. Everyone's been affected by COVID. It's been a bother, and people have died. But for those of us who have travel, you know, canceled and restricted, it's been a bother, to use a good British word. Bother.
Yeah. Now this video will be decipherable to British people, which is brilliant.
I did smoke a little British for you. I'm multilingual.
Thank you. Yeah.
But for me particularly, I felt like, damn it, people, get your shit together. I don't have time. You know, I feel like most people, and I'm sure there are other people, older people and people, you know, with diseases like I have, that feel the same way. But for most people, you're going to be interrupted for a year or two, and we got to put this off for a year, but we'll get there. You know, if it's not this year, next year we'll get there. I don't have those years. I'm running out of time, and I want, you know, these COVID, these anti-vax idiots who keep dragging this stuff out. It infuriates me because it really is just taking time away from me that I just don't have.
So what you're saying is the anti-vaxxer movement is delaying the circulation of the vaccine, which in turn is allowing the disease to continue and limit everyone's freedom.
So these political divides that we've encountered in this polarization and the people who conspiracy theories, they're affecting us in ways that matter. You know, it's just, and I feel like me especially, because we just, you know, we were traveling and speaking the things I love the most, and it all got shut down. And you know, and I get it on the front end of COVID. You know, we didn't see this coming, and it's like ALS, you know, it happens. You can't control it. You can't be mad because it happens. But the way we handled it is what I'm mad about. And
So what do you think the future is? Do you think a secular world is too distant for us to kind of hope for?
I'm honestly discouraged, if I'm honest. I think we're moving in that direction, but it's glacial in its pace. It's just so slow. There was a question on the panel today about, you know, how the church gets their message out and everybody has the same message in the groupthink. And, you know, how can we transfer that to the atheist world? We can't. You can't tell people how to think. That's the antithesis of what we're doing and what we're about. But at the same time, the only way we grow non-religion is one person at a time, one message at a time, one YouTube at a time, one podcast at a time, just continuing to hammer at it over. We say the same things over and over and over, right? Mm-hmm. But we know different people hear it at different times, and the same person will hear it several times at different points in their journey, and it will impact them differently. So we have to keep saying it.
Yeah.
And so it's gradually going to move the needle, but it's so slow. And it's almost like you just can't even see the end of it. You know, I do believe it's coming. I believe we're moving toward a secular world and away from religion, just in the growth that we see in the nuns and the non-religious. But it's so slow. And it feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Trying to see the big picture on this, I guess our species, you know, when you look at the fraction of the timeline of our planet and how long our species has been on it, it's such a tiny slither, isn't it? And even in terms of like scientific knowledge and discovery and inventions, we're then even narrowing it down even further, aren't we, to just a few hundred years. So I guess, like you say, from the point of view of the human lifespan, it is glacial, like you say.
Yeah, you're right.
But when your lifespan is curtailed further, it must be a source of extra frustration.
It magnifies everything for me. It's just the days take on much more meaning. Every day is much more precious. Every moment is much more precious. And so, you know, I tweeted out the other day. I got a terminal diagnosis almost 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and then I became busier than I've ever been in my life. I'm busier doing the stuff I'm doing, whatever that is, writing a book and doing shows and things, than I've ever been. And so I feel like every day when I get up, I'm energized to do the things I'm doing, and I feel like if I kind of waste a day, I feel like, oh my God, I wasted a day. I don't have days to waste, you know?
Yeah. I do see what you mean. Well, listen, I'm just filled with admiration, and I'm really glad that you were able to share that story about shunning. It wasn't actually what I planned to talk to you about, but I actually think that's the headline subject of this video, that sometimes shunning does break down.
That's great. You know, I hadn't thought of that either, because I know that's a big thing with the Jehovah's Witness, and I know we talked about that before. That was probably 2 years ago, right? So yeah, things can change, and I don't ever want to give someone false hope and say, you know, just hang in there, it'll get better. It may not. It really may not. I have a daughter I may never see again. And I have to deal with that. That's just the reality of the world I live in. So, but I do have one that I'm able to see, and 3 grandchildren, and a son who's in good relationship with me. And so, I don't know. You take what you get, man, and try not to be filled with too much anguish and regret about what you. I mean, you deal with it with your father. How long's it been?
8 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man.
Well,
I know.
Again, relationships change. Relationships are different, and individuals are different. And I think the more time passes as well, the more you're able to. I think it's almost a survival instinct. To manage your emotions a little bit.
Well, you kind of have to.
Yeah.
Bevan and I talk all the time. You know, I live with a terminal disease. She lives with me as a caregiver to a terminal disease. We don't get up every day thinking about that. We almost live in denial, and we go about our day as though we're fairly normal, except when she has to help me do stuff, which is daily at some level. So it's in front of us, but it's not in the forefront of our thinking. It's just a thing we kind of have to. It's part of the day, like if you were taking medicine for anything else, or you're preparing breakfast. It's part of your day, but it's not the totality of our lives at this point, because it's not that bad for me yet.
No.
Now that will change as things progress, but we have to live in a state of denial, or you can't deal with it every day. It's too much.
I agree. So the first interview was on Zoom. The second interview was in person in America. Hopefully the third
in Croatia.
We'll be in Croatia.
Next summer, maybe?
Yeah.
You sent me, I'm just...
God willing.
God willing, you know. God willing, the creek don't rise. You sent me some pictures of those lakes. What is that called?
Plivica. Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
It may be the most beautiful place on earth.
Yeah, yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
I have
isn't
to
it?
see that.
Yeah. So,
I mean,
make it
it's just,
happen.
it's stunning.
Yeah.
Is that far from where you live?
It's 2.5 hours drive.
You'll take us though.
You can bet. You can bet.
And thank you for, you know, this has been a really cool weekend, and you probably provided the single best moment when your response to my talk yesterday, and you had what you said,
Oh.
and encouraging the people to stand up. That was just,
I meant it.
it was stunning.
really
It was
moved
stunning.
by what you said.
Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Lloyd. That was special.
I just hope people get to see it on YouTube. Hopefully there will be a link for me to point to. In terms of Dying Out Loud, you have a new podcast.
Yes, that GD show.
Yeah, so
Yep.
people can check that out.
It's you can find it on my YouTube channel, Dave Warnock, Dying Out Loud. Links to it on the website, daveoutloud.com. I'm pretty
and in
easy
the
to find.
description, yeah.
I'm pretty easy to find, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay,
Yeah.
so viewers, please
We're
do.
having fun with that. We're going to have you on, by the way.
Oh.
We talked about that, right?
Yeah. I don't think we have, but I'd
we
be
will.
delighted.
No,
I'll
you're
be
coming
honest.
on.
So
We
viewers-
I have a co-host, Genevieve. That's the GD show. Is not
Yeah.
that goddamn show. It's that Genevieve and Dave show.
Ah, okay.
You filthy-minded people. But we try to do a little different in that we have guests on, and it's a live stream. We do take calls, but we try to focus. Each episode has like a theme or a subject or a topic, and we'll probably talk about shunning or obviously JW with you. But you know, each guest we try to hone in on something unique about them, other than another deconversion story. Although those are always unique because every person's unique. We try to have a theme, about the show. So let's try to do a little something different.
I very much look forward to that.
That'll be
So,
fun.
viewers, I hope you've enjoyed our conversation. Don't forget that you can watch more such videos by subscribing to the Lloyd Evans channel, but that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for watching.